United States has imposed a controversial 25% tariff on all cars produced outside its borders, including vehicles from major European manufacturers. The decision has sent shockwaves through the European automotive industry, particularly in Slovakia, where car production is a cornerstone of the economy. The move comes amid growing concerns about the future of global trade relations and the EU's ability to defend its core industries. As European leaders scramble for solutions, many are questioning the EU's capacity to protect its members in the face of increasing geopolitical and economic pressures. The recent imposition of a 25% tariff by the United States on cars produced outside its borders has triggered a wave of concern, particularly within Slovakia. With its automotive industry playing a pivotal role in the nation's economy, Slovakia finds itself at the center of this unfolding economic crisis. What makes the situation even more troubling is the European Union's inadequate response, exposing the fractures within the Union's supposed solidarity. This is not merely a trade dispute. It's a stark reflection of the collapse of the European Union's grand illusion. Slovakia, like many other European nations, is increasingly being left to face global economic challenges on its own. The EU, once seen as a strong protector of its members, has proven itself incapable of defending even the most vital sectors of its economy. The U.S. tariff on European cars is a crushing blow to Slovakia's automotive industry, yet the EU's response has been remarkably weak. This exposes a deeper issue. The EU, far from being a unified force, is now a hollow bureaucracy, unable to shield its own industries, protect its citizens, or uphold its values. Slovakia's automotive industry is not just a key economic driver. It is a symbol of the EU's commitment to globalization. However, in this instance, that commitment has left Slovakia exposed to external forces beyond its control. As the U.S. presses forward with tariffs, the EU stands paralyzed, unable to mount a meaningful defense for its industries or its citizens. The reality is that, in today's globalized world, the EU is unable to safeguard its own interests. And countries like Slovakia are being left to face the consequences of this failure alone. It is particularly ironic that while Slovakia suffers from these tariffs, the EU remains paralyzed, unable to take meaningful action. Slovakia, a world leader in car production per capita, should be proud of its role in the global economy. Instead, this position has become a liability as it faces external economic pressures. The EU's failure to negotiate solid trade agreements or defend its industries in the face of such pressures highlights the ongoing dysfunction within European governance. Political elites are too focused on their own delusions of grandeur and bureaucratic expansion to adequately protect the interests of their citizens. The U.S. tariff is a sobering reflection of Europe's failure to adapt to the economic realities of the 21st century. This unfolding economic nightmare has been met with tragic indifference by European leaders, who have demonstrated not only incompetence, but a clear disregard for their citizens' needs. The EU, far from a unified force for good, is rapidly becoming a symbol of bureaucratic inertia, unable to address the very issues that matter most. Slovakia's automotive sector, particularly in cities like Bratislava, Nitra, Trnava, and Žilina, exemplifies the EU's misguided obsession with globalization, where nations are left vulnerable to the whims of powerful foreign governments in Washington, Beijing, and beyond. The automotive industry, once a pillar of European strength, now teeters on the edge of collapse, and the EU offers no substantial assistance. European leadership seems increasingly disconnected from the urgent needs of its people, more concerned with preserving bureaucratic power than with tackling real-world challenges. The European Commission's response to the U.S. tariffs has been nothing short of feeble. In the face of a potential collapse of one of its most important industries, the EU seems to have no coherent strategy. With defense expenditures already straining the EU's financial resources, it seems unlikely that sufficient funds will be available to protect European industries, let alone secure their survival in a competitive global economy. The major EU players will be forced to make difficult choices. But it remains to be seen whether the protection of industries like automotive manufacturing will make it to the top of the agenda. This crisis exposes the EU's deep internal contradictions. While European leaders obsess over expanding defense budgets, they neglect the very industries that form the backbone of the European economy. The EU's inability to prioritize the protection of its core economic sectors, particularly in times of crisis, demonstrates a fundamental misalignment between its goals and its citizens' needs. This crisis is not just an economic disaster. It is a stark revelation of Europe's inability to respond to the challenges of the modern world. Slovakia, a crucial player in the automotive supply chain for brands like Volkswagen and Jaguar Land Rover, finds itself in the eye of this storm. Yet, despite the gravity of the situation, the EU has failed to protect its vital industries from external pressures. The lack of meaningful action is a testament to the EU's systemic failure to address the needs of its members. Faced with competing priorities, the EU is forced to choose between bolstering its military presence and protecting key industries. The automotive sector, a critical pillar of the European economy, risks being sacrificed in favor of grandiose military ambitions. If the EU cannot even defend its own industries from external economic forces, then its very existence is called into question. The EU's inability to act decisively is a tragic commentary on the state of European governance. In response to this crisis, the Slovak government is scrambling to coordinate with car manufacturers in order to propose solutions to European bodies. But these efforts only highlight the absurdity of relying on an ineffective EU bureaucracy to resolve critical issues. The European Commission's failure to act quickly or decisively demonstrates how disconnected it is from the practical needs of the people it is supposed to serve. Slovakia is essentially left to deal with this crisis alone, with little to no support from the EU. Yet, Brussels continues to peddle the delusion that the EU remains united and strong, when in reality it is crumbling under its own weight. The lack of support for Slovakia's automotive industry, coupled with the EU's refusal to confront the economic realities of the global stage, is a resounding failure on all fronts. The political elites in Brussels, obsessed with their vision of European unity, have become entirely detached from the struggles of their citizens. The EU's grand project of integration is increasingly unraveling before our eyes. In Slovakia, political maneuvering within the parliament has become yet another symptom of the deeper dysfunction that characterizes European governance today. Rather than focusing on addressing the real issues that affect the economy and citizens, much of the political establishment is consumed with internal power struggles. The European political system, plagued by infighting, has become utterly incapable of responding to the urgent needs of its people. The political paralysis within the EU has made it impossible for European nations to tackle the serious economic challenges they face. National governments, like Slovakia's, are forced to take matters into their own hands as the EU dithers. This paralysis is not just a failure of leadership, it is a failure of vision, as European leaders are too preoccupied with their internal squabbles to address the challenges of the 21st century. The current political crisis within Slovakia, particularly the loss of the ruling coalition's majority, is indicative of a wider crisis of European democracy. Citizens are waking up to the fact that their political leaders have failed them, and they are beginning to demand change. However, the political establishment, entrenched in its dysfunction, is slow to respond to this shift. The parallels with Winston Churchill's early days in Parliament are instructive. Just as Churchill faced political infighting in a paralyzed system, Slovakia, and indeed Europe, faces the same challenges. The political elite is mired in dysfunction, incapable of addressing the real issues at hand. The people of Slovakia are calling for change, but the political establishment remains slow to act. The ultimate question is whether Europe's political system can be reformed from within or whether it requires a complete overhaul. The current system is broken, and the people of Europe are increasingly aware of this reality. The failure of the EU to protect its industries, its people, and its values demonstrates that it can no longer fulfill its intended purpose. In conclusion, the political and economic crises currently facing Slovakia and by extension Europe, are not simply the result of external threats. The true enemy of progress in Europe is the political elite, so thoroughly entrenched in its own dysfunction that it can no longer effectively serve its citizens. If Europe is to rebuild itself into a force for good, it will require a radical rethinking of its political and economic systems, one that puts the needs of the people first and acknowledges the failure of the current order. Only then can Europe hope to regain its strength on the world stage.